In roller derby, holding space is an empowering, often intimidating act of strength and strategy for oneself and/or teammates. Holding Space, the podcast, clears the floor for conversations that touch upon race, class, identity, and privilege to amplify stories, build community, and make more connections in the skate world. Expect lots of smart, dope skate people musing about life on and off 8 wheels and silliness. Can't forget the silliness that you never knew you needed and won't be able to live without. This is Holding Space with Magical Realism. Welcome. Movie Club, we watched United Skates, the 2018 documentary about African American skate culture in the United States. What was your initial impression? I think this is both of our second time, right?
Yes, this was my second time. Yeah, the first time I watched it shortly after it came out, and I watched it again last night on HBO since it was streaming free there. My initial impression of the documentary was it was amazing. I learned so much about skating culture and Black culture, and there were just so many things that I just did not know about, like the history of skating and, during Jim Crow era, and how people had to fight to get it desegregated, like roller rinks, like the place where people go to experience joy, and I think they were at like senior night, one of the guys said that the rinks would rather die than integrate, and so like rinks were closing at that time, and that just blew my mind. And then fast forward when you have like Bloods and Crips coming together in a neutral zone like the roller rink, and if they could do it, like why couldn't it happen during Jim Crow era? I loved the, personal stories that were shared, like following Fee and Reggie and Buddy at Rich City. I grew up in LA, so it was really cool to learn more about that culture in LA. Just things that I had never experienced because I didn't grow up roller skating. I started skating after I left California. So it was really cool to learn about that as well. What was your first impression?
I initially saw this documentary in the movie theaters. It had a limited release in like the fall of 2017, probably 2018. I don't know. But I was dumbstruck. I felt like I was immersed in it, in that world that the directors Diana Winkler and Tina Brown created, it just like immediately, and it felt like such a joyous place. And it's funny, you mentioned like the rink, it almost like it almost is like a place of worship, like a place to find
Church of Skate.
Yes, exactly, right. It's still, something, it's secular, right? Although there are gospel nights, I think, some places and what have you, but just like a place to kind of find fellowship and find community and just exercise, all like exorcise and exercise, like just, and dancing, music, and just be in a place that's just joy and artistry, and also and multi-generational and accessible. It always strikes me how the skate rinks with the fondest memories attached to it are the ones that are usually the cheapest and most accessible to communities. I remember walking out of the theater that first time and thinking, like, why isn't there more crossover between derby and roller rink and jam skaters and rhythm skaters in terms of like their struggles,
and park skating,
but like in terms of like finding literal like common ground in this struggle to preserve this vital space, to hold this space down, so I still feel that way. But in this viewing, I think that I was able to appreciate the details that, the first time on the screen, like I might have like missed. I think this time I was just really amazed at how much they pack in 90 minutes. Tell me what changed or what you thought about this viewing versus that previous viewing.
Well, I think In between the first time that I saw it and the second time, I've become a little bit more familiar with that type of skating and that type of skate culture. And so after the first time I saw it, I wanted to know more. Like I felt I had so many unanswered questions and there was just more that I wanted to know about. And so having had that time to sort of like learn and, even if it's just like following people on Instagram and like watching them skate and just learning about like the moves in their in their city and their local rinks and stuff. So I had a different appreciation for the documentary the second time around. Aside from, the issues of racism in rinks that are pretty heavily discussed in the documentary, the biggest thing that, like, I had a couple of questions around that, but kind of how it relates to roller skating in general. And my questions, it's kind of like two-part. So how much of a difference do you think that there is between of roller skating in Black culture and white culture? And do you feel like there's some amount of cultural appropriation going on, given like how roller skating has exploded recently? Not that, white people haven't been roller skating for decades as well, but like the way that it is so ingrained in Black culture, to see how, like a roller skater with little to no skill has, thousands of followers, has sponsors, and, you have skaters who are busting their asses and who are just these phenomenal skaters, but they just don't get that attention because this brand of like roller skate culture that has been created by like roller derby and like a couple of the larger skate brands, like that they're perpetuating. It just like doesn't acknowledge this other type of skating that has been here this whole time and that will still be here because it's not a trend for them. Like this is their culture.
Mm-hmm.
That was a lot of words.
It was a lot of words and a lot of great ones. To unpack it, I think that part of it is that I think we can both agree that Black skating, jam skating, the contributions by Black people to jam skating have gone unrecognized pretty much across the board. Like to the extent that they deserve it and that they've helped hold down rink skating. And to the extent that they continue to innovate, because look at all those dance styles, I think that they aren't. And whenever, in boardrooms or what have you, whenever people are talking or devising business plans, the market and the ideal skater that they have in mind isn't a Black person, unfortunately and sadly. And that speaks to systemic racism and structural racism. I also think that a lack of media coverage, a lack of visibility, before this documentary, we wouldn't have known. We wouldn't have had an idea. We wouldn't have even thought to think about it, right? We would have just noticed, gone about our way. Like every time we've obviously observed the closures of rink, but we really don't have the idea of the culture that's being lost when one of those rinks shut down. The frustrating part was that they would just shut down and remain empty. And just like, it was like, what was the fucking point?
Well, that's what happened to World on Wheels before it reopened. It just sat there for like years until somebody could make it happen again. And
I think that that's part of it. I think that it's structural and systemic because obviously there's a benefit to closing down and keeping it close to whoever owns that land. Maybe it's a tax benefit or something, but there's a loophole there that's being exploited, because I feel like they wouldn't just do it out of spite. It's because it's more advantageous to keep it closed than to, remain open and operational. And that's unfortunate. But I just wanted to make one more point.
Mm-hmm.
I think that also these new brands that have come out nowadays, they tend to kind of package it in selling a lifestyle and selling a subculture and this tight-knit culture. And I also think that African American culture and the way that existing as an African American in this country, you need those safe spaces. You need those kind of like nights and those, out of like, structural inequality and discrimination, but also you find community and you ultimately, what's the word? not co-opt, but like you empower yourself from disempowerment. I think African Americans excel in that, and marginalized peoples excel in that, and find empowerment in oppression sometimes. And I feel like they've made culture, like I think that, as we saw in the historical portion of the documentary, they were given one night a week. And what did African Americans do? They made it their night. They made it, and they kept it, and they held rigs down when maybe like trends had moved on.
Yeah.
What do you think?
So they took that, the night that was given to them out of segregation, and there was like a bunch of posters that came up. So they had like MLK Night, Urban Night, Sepia Night, Hip Hop Night, Soul Night, R&B Night. At my local rink, it's called Hip Hop Night. It's not called Adult Skate or Adult Night. It's called Hip Hop Night. And they turned it into, a safe space where they know for sure, like, we can come here with our like micro wheels and our clay cut wheels and whatnot and not be kicked out of the rink like Fee and her family were when they went to Moonlight. But I just, it just drives me crazy when you have people who are just phenomenal skaters and they don't get the recognition that they deserve, not just because of like the hard work that they put in as an individual skater, but like a legacy that they come from, like the gentleman at the senior night said that he was, they were there holding up signs outside the rink. It was a peaceful protest and he got cracked over the head and was bleeding, like that, just the things that some people did to be able to roller skate. And now, it's just like a trend that people want to take advantage of and make money off of in every way, shape, and form. And like the cherry on top of that for me is the racism and the discrimination and the bigotry that you see in derby culture and in park skating still, because people put skates on to escape that pressure and that frustration. I think Shannon Fee's son was saying, when he goes and skates, he just leaves it there. It
was an outlet.
It being like the structural, institutional, systemic racism that people feel. And so when you put on your skates and you're still experiencing that, it blows my mind. Like, why are we recreating these structures that people experience in everyday life in the thing that's supposed to bring them joy? And I think that's what the beauty of the roller rink is, because, while you can experience racism in the rink from like owner to skater, the culture and the diversity and just, when the interactions that you have with people. And I think, I don't want to say it makes all of that worth it, because racism is never worth it, obviously, but like it makes it easier to deal with,
Remember when Reggie was like, whenever they close a rink down, it means that we're
your spirit dies.
Yeah.
Oh yes, yes. I think that,
go for it.
Like, sorry, just one other point. When rinks shut down and like because of rezoning, I don't just feel like it's because, putting in the big box store makes more money for like a municipality, like via tax money or whatever. I think it is an active decision to attack a community and a culture, because what happens when kids don't have things to keep themselves busy in communities where they already lack resources? Well, they get in trouble. What happens when they get in trouble? They go to jail. They go to prison. That's modern day slavery. That's free labor. Like, maybe people might think that's a bit of a stretch, but like, it's just another way.
It's a trap. It's like another way to
keep people in trouble. Exactly.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that, and when you take away a rink, which is a physical activity, you're also removing people's means of exercise. And what is exercise? A healthy way to release stress and to help with mental health, like you're not just closing down a dusty old rink. You're taking people's means of socializing, emotional health,
Yep.
even spirituality too, for the people who do go for those gospel nights.
Well, and it helps with like chronic illness,
It's
things
a
like
fabric
that,
of the
like to
community.
keep
Look
your
at all
body
those
moving.
people. You can't get to like be in your 70s and 80s
Yeah.
just by, as a lark. Like it's that skating that have kept
Yeah.
those seniors that healthy. But I wanted to say, golly, you made so many good points. I forgot what I wanted to say. I forgot my thoughts.
Sorry.
Anyway, let's keep talking. Yeah. To me, the racism that was clearly discussed in United States, like what I felt like two different, like it felt two pronged, like it felt systemic and structural, and it felt kind of like bigotry and discrimination. And we saw the closure of the rink and the heavy police presence as that sort of like structural arm. And I think that when you're fraying a community's fabric, when you're removing a rink, when you're just
Oh, yeah.
when you're destroying a rink, that's like the divestment, right? Cultural divestment, uprooting the culture. And then the bigotry of it, right? Like that guard that was like, these are Section 8 people. Like, what do you care, dude? They're just coming to skate. What does that have to do
Yeah,
with
like,
anything?
did he
That was
think
really
that they
weird.
shouldn't be allowed to experience joy just because they have subsidized housing? Like, what the
Yeah,
fuck was that?
yeah, that was bizarre. And
Yeah,
I felt like it was because that man saw perhaps white faces behind the camera and felt like he's being very chummy with them. I don't think that he would have said
yeah,
that to other black people, to black people that were there, that were attending. Like they'd be like,
yeah,
go fuck yourself. Like, why are you saying that?
yeah.
And then the baggy pants, the articles of
Yeah.
clothing, and
No
the
earbuds.
wields. Like, what does that have to do with anything? Why do people
All
have to
skates
dress a
must have
certain
toe
way?
stops. Yeah.
Yeah, it went above and beyond, like policing no R&B or heavy metal. Like
Yeah,
it was
that was
clearly
weird.
attacking, culture. Like I was like, sir, like, I mean, this wasn't that long ago, but it's like, have you looked at Billboard's 100? Like, it's not R&B and rap aren't these niche sort of like
Yeah.
music's like, that's what it is. That's the
Yeah.
culture. That's
Yeah.
literally our culture here.
And when Fee and her family couldn't skate because of the type of wheels that they had, the woman said, "I'm sorry you feel that way because it's not meant that way." It's like, then how is it meant?
Bullshit.
Because yeah, like that's the whole like, well, it wasn't my intention. I don't care what your intention was. Like it had an impact.
There's a really great book by Professor Carol Anderson, and it's called White Rage. It's all about how racism is and like white rage is encouched in structures and bureaucracy and
Hmm.
policies, and that's
Yeah.
how they manifest themselves, and that's how they do the
Yes.
most violence and harm. And
Yeah.
I feel
She
like
says
that's
like,
the
"Oh,
brilliance of it.
I'm just following through like
It's
on the
just
rules. Like
policy.
this is
It's
what
just the
my boss is
rules.
like the owner is telling me to do."
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, who makes the
exactly.
rules? Like human
Yeah.
beings, right? Right, white people. That's kind of what that reminded me of. Anyway, I also wanted to kind of pinpoint that United States like seemed to operate on like a few different levels, and I love that about it. Like it felt like a tiramisu of a documentary. Like it was like it
Now I
was like
want
a
cake.
it was like, it was like that historical cultural piece with those regional dances, which were amazing. And I
Oh,
just love
so
that this
good.
day and age and like the internet that seems to like flatten everything. People were holding down their cities and their cultures so strongly. I love that.
Hmm. Sorry.
So good. The public economic social development part of it also was a
Hmm.
piece that was discussed. The nascent hip hop aspect to it, and
Yes.
I feel like like it's I know what I wanted to say. Like another thing that rinks do. I mean, like bear with me here. I'm gonna try to make a metaphor, but like it
Yeah.
feels to me like rinks are like the melting pot, right? And I feel like rinks are the pot. Like if I think of my own experience and I think of being someone from the Bronx, if I feel like the rink was the place where everyone, like the gangs, like that was their neutral territory, that was where they hung out, and that's where the hip hop artists came to perform. It was like a hotbed for culture. Like it was something that created, or like maybe like a, I don't know, maybe it's hard to explain, but it feels like the rink is kind of like the vessel in which like some really amazing culture is made, and the
Yeah.
place, like the locale, like I don't want to see that lost. Like I think that
Yeah.
we as human beings need those. We need locations. We need places. I mean, in the era of COVID, I don't know what that will be like, but I think we still need that. And I think that the rinks serve that process.
Because you bring so many different types of people, different backgrounds, different races, like different upbringings, and then you create a rink culture. So each rink has their own distinct, not just dance moves and like types of skates that they have, but
Music,
music,
dialects,
culture. Yeah, like
ways to move their body. You know,
when I
like
was in LA, I went down to Fountain Valley, the roller rink there, and I just started dancing with this gentleman, and he was, I was like, oh, I'm just here for a week visiting home, and he was like, oh, well, if you have time on this day, then go to this place, but don't go to this other place because the DJ is not good on that day or whatever. And I was like, people follow a DJ, and he was saying like the DJ that's here tonight is going to be at this other place this other day. So like if you want to go to any other session, like go to that DJ and that, and it's you're totally right. It's a melting pot of bringing all these
people. Like we're supposed to be
together.
like, are people supposed to go like on Zoom in 2020 and like create
Yeah.
culture that way? Like you can't.
Instagram Live.
I know it's so then, and then the last level that the documentary operates on is that personal, the anecdotal level with the three stories. There's the rink owner. They're like skate lovers. All three of them, that's what they mostly shared in common, besides like belonging to the African American group. The rink owner, who is, I think he said his son would be like the fifth generation. So he's like four generations of skaters. The party organizer who was trying to bring that culture or assemble that culture in his area. And Fee, the mom who was trying to connect to that culture herself because she's deeply, like she loves it clearly, but also trying to keep her kids out of trouble and trying to find an outlet for them and, encourage their love of skating too. So I commend them for what they were able to illustrate and capture in 90 minutes. And just the dance sequences are so beautiful. That sequence when they represent
I wanted so much more. Like I wanted more dancing. I wanted more about like all the skates that people were making. Like I think Shannon made skates out of like boat shoes. Like I've never seen anything like that. That was amazing. Like you find a shoe that you like that's comfortable and then you just skate on it. Like you don't need $700 like Moxie Jack boots. Like just get a shoe and a plate and some wheels. Like boom, done.
And there's so much more like authentic to your personality. Like they're so they feel like they're like you could see someone's skates and know so much about them. Like there's so much more individualized that way. I thought it was so like they had like Timberlands or like dress shoes. Everyone was just on wheels, but like so.
When I was at Fountain Valley, I saw a lot of dress shoes and like one person was like kind of grungy and had some Doc Martens, and I was like, "Ooh, I want those!" Like, those look awesome.
So dope. I think Ioana has like a pair of like. They have
the platforms. Yeah.
Like, see, I could just look at those and I know so much and never like, I don't have to like speak a word. And then like, there's that too, right? The whole, like, those aren't, when you think of what DIY culture is, somehow those never get mentioned. That isn't really considered.
Yeah. You think about like Vans, mounted tennis shoes with, cheeks and bowls, CIB, slider blocks, and like you're going to the skate park. You don't think about like the creativity that this culture brings and what the type of skates that they're bringing. Like that's not discussed at all. Like the first time I saw skates like that was when I went to Fountain Valley. And
where's Fountain Valley?
It's like an hour south of Redondo in California.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it took like an hour to drive there. We went there on Thanksgiving Day, like night, like had a meal with my family because that's like the day that they know that I'm going to be in LA. And then we drove down there. My mom was so mad. You know, she was like, I can't believe you're not hanging out with your family. And I was like, I'm going with my cousin. I'm hanging out with my family. Like, we're going skating. Yeah, and I was just blown away, like, at how beautiful they were. And I had never seen wheels like that before. Like, it was just this rich skate culture that, like, I could finally, like, touch and feel and interact with and, like, learn more about. And especially with the resurgence of roller skating in, like, mainstream, more, like, white spaces, like Derby and like, skate parks, and how it's become really trendy and people want to learn how to jam skate. Not only are they not
Jam
giving
skate dance
credit,
classes, like the aerobic
yeah,
class.
where white people are profiting off of somebody else's culture. Where do you draw the line, right? Like, skating is trendy now. Like,
or how do you pay respect? How do you, like, you know,
right.
how do you contribute to the perpetuation of that culture and not just kind of be like a culture vulture or a parasitic,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. Like,
That's huge.
I think one of the people at the senior night, or actually, I don't remember who said it, but they said, this is my history, this is my culture. And so for me, going back to that first question that I asked, and then I just sort of, like, answered and didn't let you respond to, which I
I think I
realized
did.
afterwards.
Yeah, no.
Oh, okay. I don't remember, but it is cultural appropriation. And what can we do about that? What should we do about that? Especially as rinks continue to close and those available spaces are taken away from the community whose culture is based around, you know, largely based around rinks. Like, what do we do next? Like, what do all these big companies that are profiting off of this resurgence of skating in white spaces where it's now trendy and now people want to participate? Like, are they giving back? Like, are they engaging with rinks? Are they engaging with communities that go to rinks? Like, my hill to die on last year was, like, the lack of representation on one trendy skate team, and, you know, how social media and marketing was being handled on a different team as well as that aforementioned team. And so now what? Like, they've changed, you know, they've added some black skaters to one of the teams and their marketing has changed. Like, what are they doing to pay respect, to not just be culture vultures, to help that culture blossom, that paved the way for roller skating
Them.
today?
Yeah, who
Yeah.
held it down. Yeah, I think that it's important that they pay respect and that they diversify and that they are aware of what their market demands of them. But don't want to I don't like the dynamic of that relationship. Like, I don't want to wait until someone gives me something. I rather hold
Yeah.
up others like an Adrian Cooper in Tennessee and
Yeah.
support more women and POC owned
Women of
businesses.
color.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, and you know, and spread that, like, and light that match and spread that. Let that fire, you know,
Yeah.
grow. I
Yeah.
feel like if they don't see our worth besides our dollars, our wallets, then you know, that's pace. Like, that's how I
Well, I
feel, sort
mean,
of.
yeah, like, we can impact, we have an impact with our spending dollars, obviously. But to some extent, it's not just about money dollars, because, like, culture has value, right? Like, they are taking that culture and they continue to make money off
Profiting
of
off
it.
of it,
Yeah,
right?
just because they're huge brand names and people who are new to roller skating, that's where they go. You know what I mean? But I absolutely agree with you that, like, you can, what's that expression? Like, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And so
No,
I've,
I rather
like,
teach. To use another metaphor, I rather teach people to fish rather than accept. You know, rather than get fish. Like, you know what I mean?
right.
Like, I feel
Yeah.
like rather than waiting for them to give me something, I rather learn how to fish myself and do it
Yeah.
myself and do it better.
Yeah.
That's my inkling. I don't know.
Yeah. So I still, like, I continue to get, you know, I do get messages about, like, oh, this thing happened. Are you going to do anything about it? Or, oh, this, you know, like, when the whole Impala thing happened, and it was like, you know, I'm not going to get involved in that because we had this big thing happen. We set an example for what it would be like to engage brands and things like that, and how you could maybe go about that and try to help them do better. But at this point, like, I want to invest my time and my energy into positive, engagement. So we're doing this raffle that ends today, and we're raising money for a mutual aid fund for LGBTQ, BIPOC humans. Like that's a way that you can lead by example in a positive way. Like, you can lead by example in a positive way by, I don't know, doing a fundraiser for a local rink, or like doing a fundraiser to buy skates for somebody who can't, normally access it or whatever. Yeah, so I definitely agree with you there.
Businesses.
Yes.
For sure.
Not just rinks, like any kind of business.
It's true. Oh, you know what else I wanted to say? I think that the fact that we kind of operate in these silos, be them like artificially created or not, speaks to like the pervasiveness and the insidiousness of racism, and how we're still obviously trying to shake that off, even in the ways that we know how to like surround ourselves and socialize amongst ourselves. Like, that's powerful too to me, I think.
Yeah, so I want to mention Skate Life TV. It's Skate LYFE_TV. It's predominantly, it's only like rink skating and rink culture. The page has a little over 30,000 followers, and BIPOCWhoSkate has close to 6,000, and only like 79 people that I follow on that page follows Skate Life TV. That's insane. It should be way more than that.
Everyone, how dare you? No.
Yeah. So it's just, I say that because like that says something, right? That only 79 other people follow this page that is predominantly Black skaters in rinks. And it's just the control that these skaters have, the moves that these skaters have. Like, is it because it's not like Estro? Is it because it's not Lady Trample? Is it because it's not people that like park skating and derby like idolize already? Is it because you don't know? Yeah. I just think that like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be somebody that is already well known and that people already idolize and that already has thousands of followers. Like, it should be about the skating. It should be about the athleticism. It should be about like the skill,
I hope that us as like sort of like intermediaries, we can sort of help bring a little bit of linkage and making people, become aware of each other.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to look at the comments real quick. Fee says, we notice. Yeah, like, it has to be incredibly frustrating to be a like highly skilled skater and to see how much attention like not very skilled skaters get, but just because they're like cute or like fit or like fit some beauty standard, like that is acceptable for like public and social consumption. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Somebody else said, I think it's important for white people who do rink rhythm jam skate classes. They need to go out of their way to learn about inclusivity and understand that this culture was built by people of color. Yeah, so that could be like taking like cultural sensitivity classes or like DEI training, diversity, equity, and inclusion training. Yeah, absolutely.
Doing your homework. Also, there's another documentary on Hulu right now.
Know Your History.
Roller Dreams, which is another.
Oh my God.
What?
I cried. That
I didn't finish it yet. Don't spoil it for me. But it's about the roller culture in Venice.
In Venice,
California, in the 80s, I think. Yeah.
It was like late 80s, early 90s. Yeah.
So yeah, do your Google.
Because they talk about Oh, that one. Oh yeah, I cried a lot. I was like, I was like, sat with my legs up and like leaning against the couch so my partner couldn't see when I was crying. Not that it would, matter if he saw me, but it was just like, I'm not crying. It's just my allergies.
Oh, pollen.
Yeah.
What other comments? I'm sad that I can't see comments.
Let's see. Fee says Roller Dreams is so good.
Hi, Fee. I can't see
Going
you.
further back. Oh yeah, Fee says I've never lived in the project. I think that was in response to
The security
when
guard
we talked about the security guard. Yeah. United Skate Stock. It's such a joy to hear how much you've both taken from our film.
We love it.
Yeah. There are a couple other comments, but it's mostly like waving and hello and things like that.
Bye, everyone. I mean, it's a shameless self-plug right now, but I had the honor of interviewing Fee in late fall last year. And so if y'all holding space with magical realism, if y'all click the link on my page on my Instagram, you can hit that and you can see it, you can find it. And like the actual, like, I believe it was the second episode of my podcast that launched last fall, I interviewed the owner of the Moonlight Roller Lounge, which is a to be opened skate lounge in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Adrienne Cooper, a woman of color, young mother, woman of color, trying to deal with all of the logistical, bureaucratic nonsense and BS that is ridiculous and racist, low-key racist, high-key racist, in trying to open a rink in her city and, you know, help promote and do. She's actually doing something and trying to help that resurgence of rink culture along. So yeah, you'll listen to that because we actually do talk about United Skates, and she told me that the documentary was something that moved her and was maybe like a little bit of also like a catalyst of what inspired her to open up her own rink, which also leads me to my next point. How do we save these spaces? And now with this pandemic and how difficult it's going to be to socialize in groups, I feel like that throws a wrench into things, right? As if we needed another, how do we actually save these spaces that we love? In my experience, and I'm putting on my community development hat, it seems like spaces that in which the land can be protected from the market seem to be a best bet. And I'm thinking of like in Branch Brook, Newark, they have a rink there, and the rink is actually on parkland. So they would have to raise like an actual park in order to destroy it, which I wouldn't put past any administration nowadays, but I really don't see that. It seems like a long shot. And also, I know that Adrienne is going to build her rink on the land of an African-American landowner who is a skater and is very familiar with the skate culture and skating in general. So I think that those kind of protections are the things that will be necessary in order to secure the space, secure these spaces, to, you know, take these spaces. And another thing, I'll make this last point, accessibility. I think that one key point is the accessibility of rinks. Like rinks are so cheap, and that's something that I think nowadays entertainment isn't. And it's, I don't know, I feel like that's a problem and a shame, and we should look at that too, whether it's a question of access and classism in there. What do you think?
You know, if you think about like going as a single parent, going to a rink, you know, with your family, you know, let's say you have 2 kids and it's $10, like that's $30 right there. You know, it's not cheap, but it's also cheaper than, you know, going to the movies or various other, you know, activities. Like $30, that's like a concert ticket where I live, you know, in a smaller like venue with a band that's like less known, you know. But then that's $30 that's going to a smaller local business. That's $30 going into keeping that space open, you know. So I think as soon as we can, especially after, you know, all of these restrictions are lifted because of COVID, and obviously you want to be careful, you know, like you were saying, like we don't just want to jump right into it and act like everything's hunky-dory and like it, you know, we still don't have to be afraid of getting sick and whatnot. Like we should do our best to invest in those spaces. And I don't know, maybe your local rink will take a donation, like because they're not having their sessions and things like that, like reach out to your local rink, see if they'll take a donation. Like think about the money that you would have otherwise spent there during this time. Like maybe your local rink will just accept that so that they can stay open. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
The rink where I live it's pretty sad. Like it's super sad. The guy that owns it doesn't live in Madison where I live. He lives like maybe an hour and a half away, and he owns another rink. And that rink I haven't been to, but I've heard is just absolutely beautiful. The rink in Madison where I live is awful. We used to have, I don't even know what it was. It was like compressed, like, I don't know, it was like hardboard or something like that. But every time it would rain, it would flood. Yeah. Because it would rain and it would flood and it would chip. And then, you know, he'd like replace little chunks of it at a time. And now there's sport court and it's like skating in mud. Like it's awful. And, you know, it's in a part of town that the mostly white city that I live in just doesn't want to go to. And so not a lot of people go and skate there. And if that rink closes, there isn't going to be that outlet for kids in that community. There isn't going to be that space to let that frustration and, you know, blow off that steam.
I think that we got to think about kids and what they can actually spend on this. As you know, I know that we don't have like a full-time rink. The only full-time rink we have in New York City right now is on Staten Island, and it's not accessible by public transport. It might as well be suburban. We have 2 summertime rinks in 2 parks, and the one that's uptown by Harlem is a lot more affordable and accessible to the community. And then there's the one that's kind of like private public in Prospect Park in Brooklyn. That's another key part of it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I don't know. That's like the $1 million question. How do you keep a rink open, especially in a like post-COVID society? I don't know.
Yeah, it's like, you know what? And I'm also like really afraid that, you know, with COVID and with its disproportionate effect on the African American community and people of color, if like the history that's being lost, like the culture and the history and the legacies that are being lost, that are going unwritten or written in like invisible ink. I hate to think about that, but it's really it's something that's scary too. I don't know. I thought that the names of I found myself being like getting stuck on, or not stuck, but like I love the name like United Skates because of all the cities, right? And that the documentary itself, they ended at the reopening of a world on wheels that just felt so symbolically powerful to me.
Yeah.
It made me so happy. So
yeah, I didn't think about that until you mentioned that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was intentional or by the directors, but I thought that was, once you pointed that out, I was just like,
yeah, right. It was such an optimistic note and so great.
Yeah.
And I hope it's foreshadowing.
Yeah.
So I had a question. You know, we've been talking about race intermittently. We've kind of touched upon this like in different ways, but how whiteness was in the movie, or in the documentary, how it, you know, I think I saw some in the party, but for the most part, it was the guards. And
yeah, there was, I mean, the owner of Skateland, that guy seems super chill. Like, first of all,
Skateland, is that the one in North Carolina?
No, Skateland was in LA. That's the rink that closed. Not Skate Depot. The owner of Skate Depot is also white, but Skateland was, you know, where they had a lot of the hip hop shows, and he was like showing all of the posters and stuff like that. Again, I don't know if this was was intentional, and I mean they're on the, you know, they're listening in, but I liked that they didn't focus on the rink owners as much. They focus on the skaters, they focus on the culture in those spaces, and the rink owners were just sort of like in the periphery.
They centered it on Blackness and on African American culture and on skating. And that's refreshing, right? As 2 people who have endeavors that center BIPOC, right? It's something I think that definitely it's refreshing. It's a fresh breath of air for sure.
And I appreciated, it was good to hear that the reason why, like when Skate Depot closed and they spoke to the owner was saying like they just didn't want to renew our lease,
displacement, gentrification.
I'm glad that was included because it wasn't just like, people would assume, oh, like some rich white rink owner like just wanted to sell it and make a quick buck, like no, like that dude would have kept it open if he could,
I like that.
So
yeah.
Just a heads up, it is telling me that we have 1 minute remaining on this chat. So we should probably wrap it up.
Okay.
I guess there's a limit to how long you can go live.
Do we get disconnected? Is that a thing?
It'll probably just turn off. Yeah.
So closing impressions.
Oh gosh. I just want to know more. Like, I want to know more about those, like the skates that people are making. I just want more. Like, I want to travel and hang out with these people. Like, they seem like just amazing, beautiful people, and I want more of it. How
like
about
a multi-parter, right? A la the Netflix docs, or
you have 30 seconds.
Okay. I wanted more too. I think that's it. I think that's we loved it and we want more, and hopefully there's more. Hopefully there can be more.
Yeah, Diana says it was a very clear choice that all knowledge was learned by Black voices as informers. We had great interviews with white allies, but we chose in the end not to include their voices. All right, this is going to be over in 3, 2, 1. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Bye.
All right, folks, well, there you have it. Holding Space with Magical Realism is available on Apple, Spotify, Google Play, and YouTube. Help the pod grow by subscribing and sharing it with friends. Rating and reviewing on Apple Podcasts also helps others find us. Follow the pod on Instagram at Holding Space with Magic Pod. Intro and outro music is by Sun Searcher. The song is called Latin Rhythm, and the cover photo is by James Corbett of Epic Life Images. Find him at Epic Life Images on Instagram. See you next time. Bye.